Hello friends. Thought I'd shoot this quick video. I mentioned in one of my other videos my vintage 40s Benjamin model 317, and then I dug it out of kind of semi-retirement for my oldest son to shoot in the yard as he was strong enough to pump it now, being almost 15. Anyway, I was ironically quite proudly proclaiming that the original seals in this rifle, and this rifle's very, very early because it has believe it or not, a leather pump cup seal. So the part that rides up and down that actually pumps the air isn't rubber, and they changed to those in like the 40s. Mine is leather, and the first ones were leather. So this is quite an early example of one of the first Benjamin pneumatic pumpers. Kind of cool. But anyway, when he was pumping it gave him some problems, and it wouldn't pressurize when he was pumping. So I did a little trick called an alcohol flush, and that revived it, but temporarily. And now you can't even get any air in it whatsoever. It just kind of freely pumps. So I took it apart, and so this is the pump arm. Not the pump arm, sorry. The basically the mechanism that slides up and down in this tube and pumps. And the pump cup would sit on here, and this is the linkage that basically the pivot arm for the pump arm pivots on. And so you got a kind of a washer arrangement. Anyway, I got the washer out, the pump cup rather, and this is what it is. You can see where we've had a catastrophic failure, but this piece of leather, cycling like literally millions of times, is original and over 70 years old. To me, that's just a remarkable construction and craftsmanship, and pretty amazing to see how it's held up all these years. And it certainly owes me nothing, this original seal. But anyway, the alternative here is basically I would order a modern conversion kit for it and turn it into a rubber synthetic pump cup seal. However, I don't want to do that because A, this rifle is super sweet in a leather seal configuration, although a synthetic one would get me much more pressure. It's such a sweet gun to shoot. My son's going to be shooting it, so I'm more interested in a fun gun to low pump and easy pumping than one that reaches max power, which is the opposite of most people. So you can order these, but with shipping and stuff like that from the States, it's a little bit difficult. So, or a little bit expensive for what it is. So I'm going to be making my own. And so I'll take you guys quickly through how you do that. I got a piece of 2x4 here, and sometimes you got to experiment with different woods that'll survive this process. But you drill a hole matched up to the exterior diameter of your seal. You try to get it as close as you can, but you can reduce the outer surface when you're done anyway, when you're trimming it, so it doesn't have to be bang on. You drill a hole to a depth much deeper than the actual height of the seal or the thickness of the seal that you need. And in this case, I had a little brass center part that holds the seal onto the pump rod, and so that's a perfect diameter to basically what you're going to do is you're going to drill a hole the exterior diameter of the seal. You're going to get yourself some leather like this. So I'm not sure what this is from. I bought it from a friend of mine who runs kind of like a thrift store, and he buys storage lockers, and he had a storage locker one day, abandoned storage locker of somebody who worked with leather, and he had a bunch of odds and ends. So I bought this piece here, and I use it for precisely this, airgun seals. Just a nice, good thick piece of leather. Only cost me, I don't know, 10 bucks or 20 bucks or something like that. So anyway, so you basically drill a hole, you wet the leather, you soak it, and then you put this, in my particular case, I had a perfect piece to press inside, but ideally you'd use something like a socket, because the sockets will vary and you can usually dial them in. You stick it in your vise, or you use a heavy C-clamp and you press it inside while the leather's wet. And then you allow it to dry, and that basically will conform to the surface of the hole you drilled. And you can, sand the exterior to get a nice even profile. I didn't bother to do it on this one. And then in my case, I like to use something like a thick 2x4, because after the process, it's very difficult to get it out. And like how would you pull that out without distorting it? So in my case, what I normally do is I split it. I just take a wedge or an axe and I chop it, and it splits in half, and then I'll get that out. So I'll pause this right here, and I'm going to go do that, and I'll show you guys what it looks like. All right, so I'm going to split it open. So basically what you're dealing with is, this is what it kind of looks like, okay? And so you can see that my profile I left quite rough, and the reason I did was the thickness of my leather choice is thicker, way thicker than the original thickness of this leather, and so I know I have to reduce it quite a bit on my belt sander. So I didn't worry too much about cleaning this up and making the profile super smooth, because I knew I'd have to smooth it up on the belt sander anyway. So basically you just put it on your workbench and you split it. You could use an axe or whatever. You got to be a little bit careful because you don't want to drive down, into the actual seal. So anyway, it comes out like that, and then you can see the side profile, and you're left with this guy. Okay, and again, like, the surface is quite irregular as it presses in, and the different, elements of the leather separate as it's under significant pressure. But none of that matters, because you're going to basically clean it up so it's super smooth, and you leave it very proud. Like, I have a lot of room, and the original seal was just above that brass washer, basically. And so, I'm going to trim it all the way around. It's a very small seal. And so you just leave so much more extra material for the final finishing process. And then you can see it, albeit rough, but you can see that it's conformed very well. And this is definitely not the nicest one I've ever made. The best way to get a nice surface is to ensure that your cavity is very nice. Sand it, spend some time. And then this leather, like I said, was a little bit too thick, and so it strained the leather a little bit, but none of that really matters, because, like I said, I'm going to clean it up. But you can kind of see now bear in mind this is an old leather seal, but you can see it's literally, I would say, double or 3 times the thickness. So there's a lot of work to do to shape it, but I thought I'd just kind of show you guys the process of making a quick seal like this. It's very easy to do, because this material, being leather, is very easy to work with. And so the end result is just, time, a few dollars worth of material, and this air gun will be back up and running in no time. But anyway, I'm going to pause it there, and I'll check in with you guys after I get it trimmed and shaped. And there's a little bit of process, like there's a bulk trimming you got to do, and you kind of get it to conform, and then you got to spend a little time to get it to actually go. But you can see right away it's actually a pretty good fit, and so that's what we want. And then, of course, once you oil it, it'll swell, and that'll help provide a better seal. But super simple process. Once you do one, you see how simple it is. But anyway, and I'm going to pause it here. I'm going to get trimmed up, and I'll check back in with you guys. Hey friends. All right. So I got the pump cup installed and cleaned up. So that's where we're sitting right now. This is my handiwork. You can see that it's much better and more cleaned up than before. And this is all done first with an X-Acto knife sharp to clean the edges, and then on a running belt sander. There's still a little bit of room I've left on the actual outer surfaces. The original one is quite a bit smaller, and of course the bottom of this leather is thicker, of course, so there's going to be a discrepancy in pump length, and so there's a little bit of adjustment that I'll have to do, probably taking this thickness down and maybe even taking the base down. But I just wanted to show you guys what it looks like and how easy it is to make. And then it basically should be a reasonable tight fit, but it's the type of thing that will wear in. So you can see I have just a little bit of work left to do to shape it, but you can see that it fits in the pump arm here. There we go. And you can see that that's an absolute beauty, like it was before, and it will serve its purpose well, hopefully for another 70 years. Again, it's super simple to do, and then this air gun is back up and running basically in 24 hours. There's a little bit of time. You have to let the wet leather dry in the mold, or in the form rather, so that takes a little bit of time. But other than that, there's no waiting. There's no, in my case, paying for crazy shipping and that sort of thing, and this gun will be back up and running. And leather is a great material. It just doesn't handle the pressure as well as, even close to as well as, a synthetic pump cup, which is one of the reasons they switched. Also, leather, if you don't choose a high quality source, like a top grain like this is, the little pieces can come off and clog your valve over time, and so it really pays. And I don't know if I mentioned in the first part, but a good source for leather like this is like those little tool belt carriers you get at the hardware store. You know, different brands make them, but they're top grain, high quality leather, usually riveted together, and it doesn't matter the color. Natural is better because it takes better to the water treatment. If you get a black, it might not penetrate as well. It might be treated. But anyway, if you don't have to find these at a thrift store, you can use those, you know, and I've seen them, you know, $8-10 kind of thing, and then your air gun's up and working. And honestly, once you learn how to do this sort of thing, you can reseal any old vintage spring air rifle that has a leather seal. And sometimes they're obscure and hard to find. You can make them in the exact same way, because it doesn't matter the thickness. You just reduce it on a belt grinder and you play with it. And leather is so forgiving. And the best part is if you screw it up, like I've done 1 billion times, you just redo it. So usually what happens when you're making these is your mold cracks. Like when you're pressing it in, because such an amount of pressure, it'll crack. And so like I've used hardwood in the past, and I usually just go with a piece of 2x4. The best stuff to use is a piece of like 1-inch ply, because it resists splitting better. But I just didn't have any today, and so I usually just, for whatever reason, don't end up having any when I have a project like this. So anyway, so that's what's involved. I have quite a bit more trimming on this. Like I said, I think I'm going to reduce the thickness on the bottom to get this, because this is a precise arrangement up to the valve. And so now that I've changed, basically, we'll call it the head space, but it's really the pump space by quite a bit. You can see there, that might interfere with the valve. So if you subtract that lip on top from the thickness of the bottom, I'll be right at here. That's how small this little pump cup is. So I got quite a bit more work to do, which is why I left that room, because I definitely don't want any slam from that on the valve itself. And I think I'll just take it apart and clean up the bottom a little bit so it sits a little bit better. But anyway, I thought I'd show you guys how to make one of those. Super simple. If you have any questions, let me know. But that's how you repair a spring piston air gun or a pump cup on a vintage pumper. Super fast, super easy. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll check you guys at the next one. Sorry, back again. Forgot to mention, when you get this all done and shaped and you're 100% satisfied, then you have to oil it. And I think a lot of people recommend like a neat's foot oil or a leather oil. For this application, it doesn't really matter, because the oil that you should be using in this is a non-detergent 30 weight. I use a hydraulic jack oil with seal stop. That's what I've always used. People tell you different things, but if you oil this with like a neat's foot oil, like a natural oil, it's going to get contaminated anyway from the 30 weight oil. So I just oil it with a 30 weight oil. Lots of people tell you different things. You know what, I got to tell you, it doesn't seem logical to me to use a neat's foot oil only to add a regular hydraulic oil like the manufacturer recommends later. So like I said, super easy to make. So if, you know, it basically, my argument is that this stood up to the test of time of whatever oil where people were putting this in over 70 years. That's proof positive that really it doesn't make much of a difference. So I use the hydraulic 30 weight jack oil, and I got in a vintage machinist oiler like this, and that's what I use for any sort of application like this. It's super simple to do so, but don't oil it until it's shaped, because the minute you oil it, if you have to shape some more, you foul your belts on your belt sander and your sandpaper from the oil. So do it the last step. So try it in the valve, put it all back together, make sure it works. Wipe down your inner tube first to make sure it doesn't contaminate it too much. And like you can see, I've trial fit mine a little bit, and it's a little bit black, probably from residual oil, but nothing crazy yet. You definitely don't want it soaked, because it's also, as soon as you wet it, it will become super pliable, and then it'll be harder to sand. It'll like smear. So just forgot to add that, and I wanted to throw that in there. That very last step you do after you've checked everything should be just putting some quick oil on it, soaking that leather, and then it'll conform even better. But anyway, forgot to add that, thought I would. Have a great one. Thanks for watching.